Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Federal Funding for EV Charging under the New Administration. I'm Andy Lovestead, VP of Sales at Beam Global, and I'll be your host today. We're excited to have you join us as we explore the fluid and evolving landscape of federal funding for clean mobility and how you can position your projects for success. In today's session, we'll cover how to navigate the federal funding process, best practices for crafting successful applications, an overview of available and upcoming programs, and then some insights into how Beam's EV ARC products support EV charging, emergency preparedness, and energy resiliency. Before we dive in, a few administrative items. Our presentation will run about 30 minutes, give or take, followed by a Q&A session. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time during the webinar. There's a Q&A window at the bottom of your screen with a question mark in a box. We'll address as many questions as possible during the Q&A segment, and as a bonus, we'll send some cool Beam swag to whoever asks the best question. Lastly, the webinar is being recorded. If you're unable to stay for the entire session or know someone who can't attend, a link to the recording will be sent after the event. We're honored to have Amanda Wood, Senior Government Relations Consultant at Becker, with us today. Amanda brings extensive experience in federal funding for municipalities, corporate, and nonprofits, making her well-equipped to guide us through today's topic. But first, let's jump into a quick overview of Beam Global's EV ARC solutions. I'm happy to introduce Andy Ike, Beam's Clean Mobility Sales Manager, to share the fastest way to add EV charging anywhere. Andy, take it away.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Hey, everyone. My name is Andy Ike, and I am the sales manager for Beam Global. And we're going to be talking just a little bit about just some of our solar off-grid electric vehicle charging products that we have here today. Many of these are uniquely suited for federal funding, which is why we're hosting this webinar here today there from that front. So next slide, please, Andy. Great. So as Andy mentioned, our products, they really touch upon, sustainable transportation, emergency preparedness, as well as energy resiliency. And, many of you all are familiar with Beam's flagship product. This is what we call our EV ARC product. So EV ARC, first off, is an acronym. It's short for Electric Vehicle Autonomous Renewable Charger. Really, the way that we describe it is that it's an off-grid transportable electric vehicle charging solution. So we have been deploying EV ARC systems out in the field now for over 12 years. And over the last 12 plus years, we have deployed almost 2,000 EV ARC units worldwide to date. We're in 40 unique states in the continental US. We are in 5 different countries worldwide. This is also a solution that's available through several different cooperative government contracts as well, also too, there from that front. So it's a well-established solution in the market from that front. Now, every EV ARC system is specifically designed to fit within a standard size parking space, but you don't lose the parking spot because cars can pull up and park on top of the unit's base pad, just like you can see here in this picture in the PowerPoint there from that front. And our system basically combines solar with tracking, which generates all the system's power, plus battery storage, which allows you to charge vehicles day or night, rain or shine, or even in times when there's no traditional grid out power available. So a blackout, some other kind of an emergency like a forest fire or a hurricane there from that front. So one of the unique benefits of the EV ARC is that, since it's off grid, this system is rapidly and easily deployed without any of the traditional installation work one would need to go through if you were installing an EV charger connected to the grid. So with our system, once you order it, it's usually delivered in about 30 to 90 days from receipt of order. And when it arrives on site, it's going to arrive fully assembled with the level 2 charger of your choice already installed on the system, so that once it arrives on site on delivery day, you're set up and you're charging cars within just a couple of hours after it arrives on site. So as a result, many of our customers are actually seeing ROI on day one from the date of deployment because the cost of our system is lower than the cost of construction and infrastructure work there from that front. And then since our system is off grid, you won't pay any utility rates. So there's long-term savings we'll see from that. That's the reason why we win out from the total cost of ownership perspective. And then our system, there's other unique benefits to it. Just going back to the off-grid nature of it, since it's off-grid, it can still charge a car when the grid is down. The other thing it could also do from an emergency preparedness and resiliency standpoint is it can charge other devices and electronics on the system besides just cars when the grid is down, when it's outfitted with this optional feature called an emergency power panel. So due to this very proven resiliency and emergency preparedness use case, there are resiliency and emergency preparedness funding streams that you can use to fund your EV charging project. So that's something that Amanda will get a little bit more in depth to as we move into her section there from that front. And then the other thing just to call out about the EV ARC is that, this system is, as we describe it, permanent yet transportable, or we put another way, these units are transportable, but they are not too transportable. So ultimately, these systems can be moved, but there are only a couple of very select specialized pieces of equipment that can move them around. But having transportable EV charging is just great because it gives you flexibility with your infrastructure. It's great for any leased properties you may be on as well, too, there from that front. And going back to the resiliency side of the system, you can relocate these systems for resiliency and emergency preparedness systems in case you need to, whether it be just for EV charging to essential vehicles or providing power to other essential electronics that you need to get power to there from that front. Next slide, please. So this next product that we're showing here is what's called our ARC Mobility Trailer. So the ARC Mobility Trailer is designed as the fastest and easiest way for our customers to relocate EV ARC units. We also use the ARC Mobility Trailer for many of our customers' delivery there from that front. And essentially, the trailer allows you to move an EV ARC system with just one single human individual. And again, it's by far and above the fastest and easiest way to move these systems around. But it is worth noting it's not the only way to move these systems. You can also move them on your own with a forklift or a flatbed truck as well also too there from that front. So just again, going back to resiliency with the system, this is just a really fast, easy way to relocate them for whatever reason with it there from that front. So next slide, please. All right, so I'm really excited to talk about this next product here. So the next product that I'm about to talk about is one of our recently announced Beam products, which is what's called our Beam Spot product. So the Beam Spot is essentially designed as a curbside electric vehicle charging solution that also doubles as a street light replacement. So we see this as a really great way to add EV charging to locations that are normally very difficult to do traditional infrastructure work. So think, parallel parking, on-street right-of-way, Main Street USA, kind of like you see here in this rendering here on the screen there from that front. And really, this will just be a great way ultimately for you to add EV charging to anywhere that you already have existing street lights or light poles there from that front. And the other cool thing about the Beam Spot is that, it combines many of the elements that the EV ARC does in terms of solar with tracking technology to produce energy, plus onboard battery storage that live in the column that hold up the solar array. But then you'll also notice here at the very top of the Beam Spot is a wind turbine for additional renewable generation there from that side of things. And the other thing just to call out about the Beam Spot is that, these Beam Spot units, while they are really designed primarily for EV charging, they're also there for street lighting primarily as well also too. And since it has batteries, it'll allow the street lights to still work in case there's ever a blackout or a grid outage or some other kind of an emergency there from that front. So really excited to get this one rolled out. We already have our first order from a customer from this, and we're expecting to do our first deployment here later on this year from that front. So next slide, please. All right, so the next slide here is what we call the Beam Bike product. So essentially, Beam Bike, you may look at it and it looks probably pretty similar. Beam Bike is basically a customized EV ARC designed specifically for charging electric bikes. Andy, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you, appreciate it. So essentially, it's an EV ARC that instead of having EV chargers on it, it has a bike rack on it, which you can see is mounted on this unit's steel ballast and traction pad. And that bike rack has the ability to accommodate up to 12 electric bikes at one time. And then it will basically have outlets that you can plug the electric bike into. So really, the great thing about the Beam Bike is that ultimately, it allows you to add electric bike charging anywhere that you have a parking space and good sunlight. But the more important thing that we've heard in terms of feedback from our customers is that it ultimately brings electric bike charging outside. One of the issues and security concerns we've heard from our municipal customers especially is citizens who are buying cheap electric bikes and essentially bringing them inside to charge them. And this has often caused fires in apartment buildings, multi-dwelling units and things like that. So again, this allows you to charge electric bikes outside, and also allows users to essentially lock them up on that bolster as well also too there from that front. So another great way just for promoting clean transportation there from that side. Next slide, please. And this next product here is also really exciting. It's very innovative there from that front. So this is what we call our Beam Well product. So again, it's a variation of our EV-ARC product, but this product is specifically designed for charging for electric mopeds, for electric scooters. But the other really exciting thing about this product is that it also is a desalinization tool as well too. So this will help with essentially making clean drinking water from salt water. And this is obviously something that's a huge need in certain parts of the world, and that we're identifying from a strategic standpoint here from that front. But again, this just has a lot of versatility in terms of, providing charging for these electric mopeds, desalinization for water, but then the mopeds can just take the desalinized water and deliver to the location as needed there from that front. So very excited about this also too. All the other same benefits that we talked about with the EV-ARC as well too there from that front. So anyway, that's everything we wanted to cover here from the product standpoint. Appreciate you all bearing with us through that. I am really excited to hand this off now to Amanda Wood, our federal funding consultant, and she's going to talk a little bit more about some of the funding opportunities that will be available for our products under the new administration. So Amanda, it's all you. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Andy. I'm really happy to talk about this topic. I am based here in DC, where we've had just a lot of excitement and a little bit of uncertainty. So I'm here to dispel some rumors, give you all some confidence, let you know what's happening up to the minute. So a little history. Beam made the decision years ago that really we understood that there are customers who were really excited to purchase, but didn't have the funding to do so. So we've been working together for many years through the past 2 presidential administrations to help get funding for Beam products like EV-ARCs. We were doing this before there was a bipartisan infrastructure law with dedicated funding for EV charging. And so we think we have a really good sense of what those ongoing funding streams are and what the outlook is going to be. So there are lots of different funding sources. They've been around for a long time. They're recurring funding sources. We're going to talk about some of those today, as well as give you a sense of what federal funding in general is going to look like in the coming weeks and months. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so about, 2 weeks ago, there were a series of executive orders and memos that were set to put a pause on federal funding. I think that perhaps those memos needed a little more review before they went out, because they caused a little bit of anxiety around the country, and really stated some things that were not intended and that are not probably implementable under current law. So the very latest is that memo has been rescinded, but there are still some federal funding streams that have been paused or drawn back. There have been 2 court decisions telling this administration they need to release those funds that have already been appropriated and or awarded. So we're starting to see those come out. What is actually really typical in a new administration, though we don't talk about it a lot, is that when a new administration comes in, they often pull back some pending grants that have just been released and are not yet closed and are not yet awarded, to put their mark on them. So that's really typical. And so that was not unexpected. I think some of the pauses on funding that's already been awarded was more upsetting or concerning to people. So I just want you to know we are moving in the right direction. It's taking a little bit of time to get up and going again, but we do expect that all of the regular recurring funding streams are going to be available, as well as the programs that Congress has already appropriated through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Go to the next slide. Okay. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I missed a slide. Go back there. What is DC thinking? I apologize. I got ahead of myself. Okay. People ask me this all the time. What is DC thinking? That is such a loaded question. But what I can tell you is that there are some themes that we're seeing. So we're seeing a real commitment to American innovation and job creation. which makes me really happy because BEAM is really all about American innovation and American jobs. We're seeing consumer choice. So not mandating things coming down from DC, but giving consumers lots of options in the solutions they purchase. And with those consumers being consumers like you and me, and also consumers being local governments and public agencies and things of that nature. We are seeing a real commitment to diversity and energy infrastructure. We want to have lots and lots and lots of ways to make sure that we have a really strong energy future, among those solar, certainly. And then the other thing we're seeing a lot, just because it's so necessary, is a federal investment in hazard mitigation and preparedness, because we have to worry about natural hazards, conventional terrorist attacks, cyber attacks that could impact the grid. So really getting out ahead of those problems, making investments now, so that when we do face some of those challenges in our country, we're well prepared, we can respond, and it becomes less expensive when you kind of prepare in advance as well. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so they're thinking all these things, and rest assured they're putting some money behind them as well. I'm giving you a few examples. The DOT-DOE Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant. You may have heard this big announcement that all federal funding for EV charging is going to be paused, and that is not true. They were referring specifically to the NEVI program that has been put on pause. Those are state-focused grants along highways. There is a pause on that. I think that this court auction is going to see those funds released very soon, though. There was no announcement of a pausing of the DOT Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant. So I'm going to talk about that in one of our upcoming slides. FEMA Hazard Mitigation Preparedness Grants, that's really that commitment to pre-hazard mitigation that this administration and past administrations have made. HUD Community Development Block Grant funding. That's all about that flexibility we were talking about, local government flexibility and expending funds. And then congressionally directed spending or earmarks. That's the way your member of Congress does their most basic duty, which is sending money back to you all and making sure you're getting your fair share of those tax dollars back in your community. Next slide. So I'm going to walk through some of these, talk a little bit about them. Don't feel like you need to become an expert on federal funding. I'm excited y'all are here to learn, but just know that we are happy to work one-on-one directly with you to pursue this funding and make the process as easy as possible. Also make sure that we're linking you with the most high viability funding streams. Okay, so this DOT Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant is the $2.5 billion the bipartisan infrastructure law included for local government initiatives for EV charging, with a lot of flexibility in terms of deployment areas, with a lot of flexibility in terms of solutions and power levels and things of that nature. There is still $500 million waiting to be spent that does not yet have a funding solicitation released. So we believe that grant will be released at some point this year. I think it'll look a little different than it did last time. I think some of the key buzzwords that the last administration were looking for in applications are going to look different. But just know that we are here when that is released to help you with language and make sure that you're really putting in the strongest application possible, given any new guidelines or parameters or priorities. These are for urban and rural communities, downtown areas, local neighborhoods. There is a 20% match requirement for these. You may want to think about perhaps partnering with a local business on that match. You know, these can be put on public or private property for publicly accessible charging, but we can get really creative in how we meet that match requirement. So as that comes out later in the year, we're looking forward to working with you on that. Next slide. Okay, DHS preparedness grants. These grants have been around since 2001. Over $1 billion every year for items that are on FEMA's authorized equipment list. And the reason EV ARCs are on FEMA's authorized equipment list is because they're this extraordinary combination of a day-to-day asset, but also an item that can be used for emergency power generation in the event of some sort of disaster. So I love that, unlike a lot of things on FEMA's authorized equipment list, this gets used every day in your community. It's not sitting on a shelf in case something terrible happens. So it is that emergency power panel that makes this such an extraordinary preparedness asset. There are a bunch of different preparedness grants, all with the same authorized equipment list. State Homeland Security Grant Program funds that flow through the state, 80% of the funds each state received have to flow down. Operation Stone Garden grants for communities that are on our U.S. International borders, tribal security grants, urban area security initiative grants for the top 36 or so highest threat urban areas every year, and then port security grants so that ports can apply for this funding as well. And again, we're happy to help you through that process and navigate it. Next slide. Okay, so let me do a little quick timeline on those preparedness grants because they are coming up soon. This is one of the few federal grants that has a prescribed timeline by statute. They have to push this money out pretty quickly. We are waiting for Congress to finish their work on their fiscal year 2025 appropriations bills. Yes, fiscal year 2025 began 5 months ago, so we're a little behind. But once they do, it's really going to start this process quickly where FEMA has 60 days following passage of the bill to release those funding solicitations, to give those high-threat urban areas their allocations, and then there's a 60-day application process, and then there's a 60-day review process, and then the funds are drawn down within 60 days. So it happens really quickly. So I want to talk with you about it now so you can start to get your head around potentially applying using that use case. We'll talk a little bit about partnerships later, but this is really a situation where if you need our help educating your local emergency management folks, who typically are the applicants for these funds, we're very happy to do so. Next slide. HUD Community Development Block Grants. CDBG program has been around for decades. $3.4 billion every year to entitlement communities. This is 1,200 cities and counties in the United States that get allocations. CDBG's flexibility really empowers you all to do bold things, to make decisions in your community about how you want funds expended. This would again be for public charging. One of the very specific called out allowable uses in the CDBG list is activities relating to energy conservation and renewable energy resources. So we're a really nice fit there. Often those funds are controlled through your economic development department. So we'll want to coordinate with those folks as well. And we're happy to help educate them. Next slide. Okay, community project funding. This is another word for earmarks. This is the way that members of Congress direct funding back to their communities. It's a really transparent process. It's a sort of a light lift compared to writing a big old grant application. We can help you with language and help you navigate the process, but it's essentially just sort of a 2-page form that has to be completed for each congressional office. It's a request letter that we're happy to help draft and help you to submit. Nice thing about this is you know where you stand pretty quickly. On the House side, members of Congress can only request 15 projects. At least that was the rule last year. We expect it to be the same this year. So those lists have to be published. So essentially, you're applying for this funding soon in the next few weeks, we believe. We're waiting on some deadline announcements. And then within like 6 to 8 weeks after that, we know if your project has been included on that top 15 list. My experience is if you make it on that list, you're going to get funding. So we can track it really easily and transparently. Next slide. Yep. So I put months, but I always hesitate to commit beyond that because, as I said, we're really behind last year's appropriations process. That doesn't mean they won't go ahead and get started on FY26 really soon. There are going to be last minute things we need to do. Sometimes they put out a call for projects and say they all have to be in within a week. So we like to start nice and early and make sure that we have you lined up for success. So we're happy to be having those conversations right now and are having those conversations with a number of communities. So as I said, we submit those requests. We find out about 2 months later whether or not it was requested by your member of Congress. And then 2 months after that, we look at that appropriations bill and probably see that project listed there. It may take longer than that for the project to actually pass into law, but we have a really good indication of success pretty early on in the process, really in the summer of this year, I would expect. Next slide. Okay. So this goes back to what I was saying about a couple of these other these funding streams. For example, emergency management. We're going to want to coordinate with emergency management in your community for the preparedness grants. Transportation planning, that is an important department because this could really tie into some of your public transportation as well, multimodal hubs, things of that nature, and they would probably be a partner in that DOT charging and fueling infrastructure grant. Economic development has a real hand in deciding how those HUD CDBG funds are allocated. And then your congressional delegation is really important in two ways. One, we can work with them to submit earmark requests, but also it is a huge advantage to have your member of Congress really voice their support for your competitive applications that go to federal agencies. So we are happy to facilitate those conversations and write draft letters of support, and we know it's a real differentiator. Next slide. And as I mentioned, we are here to help every step of the way. I'm happy to talk individually with any of you. We can identify what the highest viability grants are going to be for you, help navigate that earmark process. If you have funds from a grant that have not been expended, they haven't just disappeared, they're still sitting there. And federal agencies want to get those dollars out the door. So we can help reprogram funds if you have some. We can provide language for your applications and budget documents, help identify, key decision maker partners in your region, engage real closely with your congressional delegation for help in many ways, and then help to expedite the drawdown of awarded funds when you're fortunate enough to be awarded them. So I hope this helped give you a sense of sort of where we stand, the history of federal funding, how we can help you really get your fair share of that funding. And with that, I will turn it over to Andy and see if we have any questions.
Yeah, well, Andy's already answered a few, so but we'll maybe cover a couple of those. So for you, Amanda, first one's from Justin. Was the court order for, quote, awarded but not under contract that is specific to the CFI program?
Okay, so specifically the court order said if it has been awarded or appropriated, it needs to be released. So that would apply to funds that have been awarded but not yet drawn down. That would also apply to grant programs like CFI that have been appropriated by Congress and not yet released for competition.
Okay, great. And if there's follow-up there, please reach out to any of us and we'll get you some additional details. So the second one, maybe Andy answered this. Missing the question from Karen. Did you already answer that, Andy? Yeah, Karen asked, are you aware of any funding that can assist a match in California specifically? So we can follow up there.
Oh, I think Andy might be muted.
Oh, yeah, I did forget to.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, and I answered that message for Karen. And Karen, thanks so much for joining us here today. This webinar today is really focusing primarily on federal funding and Beam's support we provide for our customers to go after federal funding for our products from that side. We can definitely connect with you outside of the webinar, though, and then look at possible state opportunities also, too. That's definitely something that we're going to be also focusing on as we move forward from our side here at Beam. So.
Okay. We have a question. Can Amanda offer a list of federal funding ops, the maximum requests, and when each might be announced? We covered a little bit of that at a high level, right?
Yeah, I hesitate just because a lot of these are, every year the process is a little bit different. The requirements are a little bit different. So we really like to work one-on-one with you. The ones I highlighted today are what I would consider the ones that are closest on the horizon. But why don't we talk, one-on-one, and we'll figure out what's going to be the best fit for you.
Good. Are you only supporting grants with your product team, Beam Global?
So for our purposes, I'm really pleased that Beam has retained me to help you all apply for funding specifically for Beam Solutions. I do work one-on-one individually with many communities in the United States who retain me to work on all sorts of funding, but today I'm really focused on Beam Solutions.
Miguel, yes, the deck will be shared with you as part of the video that comes across. So Bill asks, are most of the funds awarded to government agencies or private entities?
So funds are almost exclusively awarded to government agencies. Private entities have very, very limited eligibility. There are situations like with CFI where a city or county could apply to place with a strategy where they're placing those public charging assets on private property. And then often in that case, the private partner agrees to pay that 20% match.
And I'll just jump in now too. And while the federal funding opportunities we're kind of focused on and are talking about here today are really sort of geared towards that public sector, toward government agencies there from that front, commercial entities are able to take advantage of some things that government agencies aren't able to. Like, so for example, our products qualify for the federal solar investment tax credit. Commercial entities can take advantage of that. It also qualifies for things like tax law 179, which is a sort of a standard depreciation write-off there from that front. So those are things that, we can also, Beam sales reps can talk with you about for private commercial entities there from that front as well. So.
And Linda asked something of a related question. Are there programs emphasizing public-private partnerships for California? Lots of private business interested, but not good experience with the public agencies. Amanda, you want to comment on that maybe, or Andy?
I'm not sure about specific to California. What I will say is that in the CFI program, public-private partnerships are encouraged.
Right. James asked, on average, how many units can you get with federal funding? And I'm going to tell you 1,000. No, it's really going to vary. Anyone, Amanda or Andy, want to chime in?
Yeah, I would say earmarks tend to be in the $500,000 to $1 million range. The smallest CFI grants are $500,000, but go up to many millions of dollars. Sky's the limit when you're using your own HUD CDBG funds. So it's really going to depend.
Yeah. Okay. Any of these funds available to nonprofits?
I can't think of any of the ones we discussed today, other than with the HUD CDBG funds, you are able to petition your local government to receive funding. So HUD CDBG funds can be passed through to nonprofits. Nonprofits can also pursue funding through earmarks.
Andy, Daniel asks, what kilowatt hours do the solar chargers put out?
So our EV ARC product outputs at a level 2 charging speed. It outputs at 5.8 kilowatts at 24 amps. So the system will always output at that rate. And then that output will be shared amongst however many cars are plugged in and charging at the same time. So it's designed as a level 2 top-off charging solution there from that side of things. So.
Okay. Karen asks, Phoenix was notified that they were selected for 15 million in CFI round 2. We have included Beam units as part of our proposed projects. Can Amanda please explain if we were noticed, does that mean we actually have funding deposited or obligated? To my knowledge, we have not signed any contract.
Sorry, go back at the beginning. Which funding source was this?
CFI R2.
Yeah, CFI round 2. Yeah, you are, if you were noticed, then you should receive those funds. So the court order requires that funds that have already been awarded must be released. So I think we will find this administration moving towards compliance quickly.
That's great. And Andy or I are happy to connect on e-bike docking stations. So yeah. Brandon asks, how are you sure this administration will still allow these federal funding opportunities to move forward? This administration seems determined to backtrack at all EV progress. I work at Immuni and concerned that a lot of work will be put into getting these grants only to have the administration pull the rug.
Sure. So there is a law that passed in 1974 called the Congressional Impoundment Act. And that is a law that states that once funding has been appropriated by Congress for a program, the executive branch does not have the ability to pull back that funding. So that's very clear, and that's the basis on which the judges have made their decisions. Now, if Congress decided they want to repeal remaining funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law, which I'll tell you I do not see happening for a number of reasons, then Congress could decide not to put out another round of funding. But this executive branch cannot, and the judges have told them so.
That's good. Andy, you want to comment on the preferred EV chargers?
Yeah, great question on that side of things. So just kind of, going back to, what the EV ARC is at its core, it's a replacement for the grid. We're basically using solar plus batteries as a replacement for the grid. So ultimately, our system is the power source. When it comes to the EV chargers that live on our system, we're using level 2 wall-mounted EV chargers. They're the same level 2 wall-mounted EV chargers that your organizations are already installing into the ground, connecting to the grid. All we're doing on our side of things is just changing the power source where that's coming from. So when we talk about the EV ARC, we often describe it as a charger agnostic solution, and we can use most level 2 wall mounted brands. Now there is a vetting process for us to test it and make sure it works with our system there from that front. But we've used a really wide and diverse range of different charging brands over the last 12 plus years of deploying the system. The most common brands we've deployed with are probably with ChargePoint. We've done a lot of deployments with NLX prior to them closing their North America operations. We are shifting a lot of our customers now to light on chargers, but we've also done Blink, EVgo, and others as well also too there from that side. So
thanks. Ricardo asks, could a municipal agency take advantage of the community funding option? We like the 2-page approach.
Yes, you can submit directly to your member of Congress. Eligible entities for community project funding are nonprofits and public agencies, so cities and counties typically, universities as well. So yeah, absolutely. Now, not every member of Congress accepts community project funding requests. About 80% of them do. So if you want to reach out, we'll find out if that's a viable option for you.
Good. Brandon is asking, can we add a service contract agreement as part of our grant application to the total project cost?
Yes, you certainly can.
There you go.
And just to jump in on that question, he's just trying to determine how much we should expect to pay out of pocket. We don't have the technical staff to service this equipment. One thing just to talk about with this system is just, from a cost perspective, just so everyone kind of has some insight, these EV ARC systems usually range in cost from anywhere from about $75,000, $80,000 on the low end, going up to about $100,000 on the high end. And that's what we like to call your all-in cost. So that's the solar off-grid system, plus the EV charger of choice, which is installed at our factory prior to it shipping out. Plus that amount also covers shipping, setup, and sales tax as well also too there from that side. And we can absolutely support you in terms of, the whole grant application process from that side of things, Brandon. We're here to help help you guys every step of the way. So we can help with drafting grant narrative language. We can review your application prior to submittal. We can draft up budgetary quotes that you need for those. So we'll connect with you afterwards and get you what you need to help moving those things forward from our side. So.
Yeah, just to reinforce too, the ARCs come with a 5-year warranty, and there is no scheduled maintenance or operation issues that you have to cover. So it's very low maintenance. But how do you navigate state laws around off-grid charging? We'll probably have to take that one offline.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's referring to.
I think it's probably relative to the utilities. So maybe we can follow up. That was anonymous. So if you want to send an email to Andy or myself, we can help you understand better some of the experiences we've had there. So can we consistently charge a car 24/7 with the same rate that it designed to output? Does that season has any drastic effect on the performance of the charger?
So just to talk about, the EV ARC system and the solar off-grid charging products, including, Beam Bike and Beam Well. So these are fully solar powered charging solutions, and they're fully off the grid. So some things just to keep in mind with a system like this is that the amount of miles the system is able to put out each day is dependent upon 2 primary factors. The first factor is the sun. The sun is usually pretty consistent, but ultimately there is seasonality to the sun. So one thing just to understand about our products is like that, hey, during the summer months, you're naturally going to put out more energy than you would during the winter months, because think about it, during the summer months, you have more hours of sun. And during the summer months, we are also closer to the sun. So the sun is stronger with it there from that front. So there is a little bit of variability that goes into it there from that front. Our customers traditionally are using our systems as daily top-off charging solutions, where the whole idea with it is that, cars are not driving until the battery is at or near empty, where then in turn those cars need a very long charging session, which requires a lot more energy. What our customers are doing is they plug their vehicles in every day, and they're just always constantly topping them off there from that side of things. And so as a result of that, they really don't need 24/7 EV charging as a result of that. But we always know that every sort of use case is different there from that front. We do have some other solutions to kind of work around, higher demand and higher energy requirements. So that's something we can connect with you offline there from that side of things to share that a little bit more detail with you from that front. So
I'll throw you a softball now, Andy. Miguel's asking, does the solar panel stay fixed or lean to the sun?
Great question from that side of things, Miguel. So all of our EV ARC systems and, Beam Bike, Beam Well, they all come equipped with our patented tracking technology called our Beam Track sun tracking technology. So throughout the day, the solar array will pivot or articulate so that it's always pointed in the best direction for solar collection at any given point in time. So that solar tracking mechanism on the system boosts production on the solar array by up to 25% compared to a fixed or stationary array from that front. So it really makes a difference there from that side from a production standpoint. So.
Christina, you asked about some projects with the beam spot, the curbside beams. I'll take that offline and we can follow up with you on some examples there. We actually we have some orders. They have not shipped just yet. That product was announced about a couple of months ago, and is in the final stages of production. So, Amanda, Ricardo is asking, could staff salaries be an option for the 20% match?
Not in this case, no.
Okay. We covered a little bit about the price range of the ARCs, but to get specific, send us an email or give us a call and we're happy to get you a proposal. Same with the pricing of the bike charger. It's all in that same, on the low end, 70,000, on the high end, about 100,000 for a system. So, but we can talk about the Beam Bike and the other pricing solutions as well. So, in addition, Jarrell's asking, in addition to Beam systems, do any of the funding opportunities Amanda discussed include staff time? We covered that, related to deployment, operations, and maintenance.
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the important thing to note, though, is that this is I think not a huge commitment in terms of staff time, right, Andy? Doesn't it sort of
very little?
Yeah,
none. Yes, set it and forget it.
Yeah,
deal, right?
I don't know that you'll even need it.
Set it and set.
Yeah. So it's a fully autonomous solution. So it's fully self-sustaining since it's solar plus batteries. You pretty much deploy it and it kind of just does its thing there. From that side, there's some minimal maintenance requirements as Andy touched upon, but they're really basic and simple. It's just washing the solar panels once a month and then just going out to it and doing a visual inspection of it, just checking to make sure it's doing everything you visually expect it to be doing. Like, is the solar array tracking? Make sure that's working. Take your charging couplers, your plug, just make sure you plug them into a vehicle. Just putting eyes on the system once a month is just something we recommend with it there from that front. But again, they're minimal maintenance there from that side of things, which is great. So.
Brian's asking, the city of St. Louis is required to track fuel usage, including EVs. Can you speak to this capability off the grid?
Yes, great question from that side of things, Brian. So we recognize that data is really important for many of our customers, especially for those that are utilizing grant funding where you often have reporting requirements with it there from that front. So with our system, there's really two different ways you can go about getting data. So first off, you can get high-level data related specifically to the EV ARC system, irregardless of what brand of charger you put on the system. So we offer access to a third-party web portal called My Solarc. And so through this third-party web portal, when you log in, we're able to see high-level data related specifically to the off-grid solar-powered system's performance. So when you log into this web portal, you're going to see data like how much energy has the solar array produced? How much total energy has been output from the system? How much energy do you have left in your battery? So you'll get that basic data, irregardless of what kind of charger you get on it. Now, if you have more in-depth data collecting and reporting features, like you need things like greenhouse gas emissions reduced, you want to know exactly how many kilowatt hours certain cars got, things like that, you can get more detailed data from the systems simply by selecting what they call a networked or a smart charging station during the quoting process. So those network charging stations are hooked up to their own third-party proprietary network, organizations like ChargePoint and Blink and folks like that. And then those organizations, they have their own portals that are a little bit more EV charging specific with it there from that front. So we've got a couple of different options just depending on kind of what your requirements are there from that front. So
thanks. Just a couple more questions here. Wayne is asking, what is the storage capacity? And I'll just add Abby's question to that as well, which is what is the effects of snow and hail on the panels? Go ahead, Andy.
Great question, Wayne. So all EV ARC systems, they all come with battery storage. That's the important thing to understand. So they all come standard equipped with 20 kilowatt hours of onboard storage, but we can upgrade the battery storage. So we can upgrade to either 30 kilowatt hours of storage or all the way up to our maximum level of battery storage, which is 40 kilowatt hours of storage there from that front. Now, as it relates to the effects of snow and hail on the panel, so I'm going to cover those slightly separately. So snow, not really any kind of concern from a danger perspective, other than that, snow is just going to cover the array, and that is going to prevent the array from collecting sun there from that front. There's no major issues about from a weight perspective at all. The municipalities we've talked to with it there from that front. Generally speaking, we just tell customers to not let more than 6 inches of snow accumulate on the solar array. Again, it has nothing to do with weight or anything like that. It's just about when you have 6 inches of snow on the array, the array can't produce any power with it there from that side of things. Now, as it relates to hail, the thing just to keep in mind with it is that, solar panels are actually pretty sturdy and pretty durable. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory, who is a Department of Energy funded laboratory, actually did a study on solar panels' resistance to hail. And just generally speaking, the results were pretty positive with it there from that front. Now, obviously, if you're getting, hail that is the size of softballs or larger than that with it there from that front, you might have some larger issues besides just that there from that side. But again, generally speaking, solar panels are designed to be pretty resistant even against hail from that front. So.
I think that's about it. Heather, I'd love to connect with you directly. It sounds like a challenging experience. So let's talk so I can better understand how to help you. There's been a lot of changes here at Beam in the last year and a half or so, sort of a new administration, some new senior executives, including myself, and customer service is evolving as well. So the best is yet to come. So, but Heather, I'll try and connect with you very quickly here. So Ricardo is asking for the swag bag. Why did Beam bring sunglasses to the EV ARC charging station? Because it knew it was about to shine all day long. Very good.
Good one. Good one,
Ricardo.
Have some humor. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Appreciate everybody's participation. Amanda, thank you so much. And Amanda is a great resource that works on our behalf and is available for additional follow-up and questions. Andy Ike is one of our part of our sales team. There's several of us. I did want to address Wayne. You asked about being a reseller. We have launched a reseller program, so I'm going to have Patrick White reach out to you to connect and talk you through those opportunities. But as we broaden our exposure of ARCs and the portfolio, if any of the rest of you have some interest in working with this for distribution or go-to-market opportunities, let's talk shortly. But with that, I'll wrap it up. Thank you again, Andy and Amanda, for their time. Thank you all for participating. And we look forward to talking to you further about how to drive on sunshine. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.